Warning, there will be spoilers. That is all. Before I start talking about what I've figured out about Edy, Syril Karn, and Dedra Meero as seen in Andor Season 2, I would like to emphasize something from my last video. You know, where I talked about how the Empire has become more terrifying because of Andor. A lot of people have pointed out that the Empire has already been terrifying, mostly because of the Death Star. Well, yes, the Death Star is a weapon meant to instill fear, and it did take many lives. It wasn't as horror-filled as what we have seen in Andor for two main reasons. The first is that we didn't see the fear the citizens of Alderaan felt as they saw the Death Star appear on the horizon. There was no emotional connection to the destruction. We were only shown a planet. While the loss of life was catastrophic, don't get me wrong, we didn't get the connection to it. And for the second reason, and the biggest reason, there are roughly 1.3 trillion habitable planets in the Star Wars galaxy, and only one Death Star. What are the odds that one planet killer would target your planet? If you're an insurgent against the Empire, that is. And if it were multiple planets banding together, one Death Star becomes a minimal threat at most. Even if the Death Star were a bigger threat than what I explained, the Star Wars series Andor has given us an emotional connection to those affected by the fascist regime. It shows that the Empire can be real monsters without a Death Star, that it is easier to put down those in opposition with small units of stormtroopers, officers, and droids. Then you have the face-to-face scenario, where those firing on a planet to see the destruction of lives firsthand, they don't get that. They, too, only see a planet. Stormtroopers and other troops commit the atrocities in face of their victims, and it becomes even easier if the Empire already occupies that planet, although it becomes a PR nightmare. But by the time of A New Hope, there is no Senate to disapprove of the Emperor's actions, and I'm sure he controls all the media, just like we see in Andor. And even if there were opposition, we see what happens to senators who have a dissident voice. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, maybe not. The Death Star was a huge waste of resources. They should have directed the funding to the TIE Defender program. Thrawn was right. And now, that's all I will say. Look at you. Look at you. Sitting there enjoying my videos and not subscribing. Roughly 85% of you are watching and not clicking that cute little red button. What are you waiting for? It's absolutely free to subscribe, and I will love you forever for it. Just kidding. I like you a lot. All right, let's move on to Syril Karn and his mother, Edy. I'll begin by saying I have mixed feelings about Syril Karn. On one hand, he pretty much stated that there is no limit to what force should be used to keep order in Andor Season 1. Then, on the other hand, he sees what too much force looks like and how the Empire used it on innocent population in Andor Season 2. It changed him fundamentally. I didn't think there would be a huge redemption arc for the guy. Tony Gilroy doesn't seem like to be that sort of thing. I knew he would have an epiphany, but I didn't think this was going to be an Anakin Skywalker shedding his Darth Vader persona kind of moment. But I did empathize with Syril Karn. His girlfriend was manipulating him and using him to agitate the Gore into a kind of protest, only to trap them in order to remove any further resistance. I guess to show some kind of a point, so the Empire could rob Gorman of its resources. Syril Karn was a man who believed in justice. He believed the ideas of peace that the Empire was promising. He wanted order on a scale that had not been seen under the Republic of the prequel era. Although he didn't know they were called prequels, only we do. He's a character. They aren't privy to such information. But he was also an idealist, and with that came the ambition for more authority. You didn't seem to mind the promotions, as Dedra Meero reminded him, and his line, "I am in charge here," when speaking to his mother about his post on Gorman. But I don't feel like he was a true fascist by nature. And he didn't believe Dedra Meero was either, nor did he think the Empire was at that time. But oftentimes people fall in line with something that they wouldn't normally agree with if they had all the facts and intentions of the organization. It's just so tragic that Syril Karn found out way too late. We can also look at his appearance as a sign of his struggle. From Andor Season 1 and up until Episode 7 of Andor Season 2, Syril's hair was always well groomed, showing how orderly he was internally. By Episode 7, his hair was a mess, still slightly groomed, but it had grown out and wasn't as managed as it had been. By Episode 8 of Andor Season 2, his hair was a mess, showing there was an internal struggle going on within him. His thoughts became jumbled, the right choice unclear to him. Does he continue helping the Empire with ratting out the Gore resistance, or does he secretly help those who had trusted him in the Gorman protesters? With leaving the ISB headquarters and crossing the barrier into the crowd, it was significant in meaning. The barrier represented the line that was drawn in his mind, and for a while he had been sitting on that barrier. Not physically, but metaphorically. Then he stood in shock and disbelief at what was going on as the Imperials started opening fire. The thought probably ran through his mind that the protesters would be incarcerated before this, or something like that. Instead, he witnessed as they were massacred. This wasn't justice to him. This wasn't the peace that the Empire had promised. All right, so let's shift focus to the woman who raised Syril Karn. His mother, Edy. A lot of people can relate to Syril when it comes to his mother, an overbearing mother that tries to control their child's actions and future, someone who snoops through their things to make sure they don't have a marijuana cigarette hidden in their guitar amp. Not that I ever did that. Yeah. I'm older. I like using nomenclatures for things because it's funny. You know, like the word hornswoggle. Anyway, we are shown a mother that is overly possessive, but maybe, just maybe, the interactions between Syril Karn and his mother in Andor are shown to us through a very specific lens. That it is quite possible that we are shown their interactions through the eyes of Syril Karn only. I'm not saying her treatment of Syril was anything less than, well, mentally abusive. And a lot of people hate on Edy for this. But maybe her treatment of Syril is embellished a bit to emphasize how we are supposed to react, guiding us to a specific way to feel it when he dies. Then we see her watching the news with her bridge gals. For those of you younger, bridge is an old lady card game if you didn't know. But we see her watching the news and crying. This moment isn't through the eyes of her son. He's dead. We just get her from her own perspective. She loved her son. The reason she urged him to return to Coruscant and leave the post on Gorman was to keep him at minimal risk. It's the same reason she wanted him in a nice cushy desk job, minimal risk of harm. We all know how children can talk about their parents, and most of the time they don't understand why we do or say what we do, just as we didn't understand our own parents' actions. Until we became parents ourselves, that is. Edy wanted the best for her son, and she knew that becoming someone of importance in the Empire was not the way. So we are shown Syril's perspective of their interactions so we can come to the conclusion that his mother just wants to control him. Until the end. We are then shown her perspective to show that a parent's love for their child is limitless, no matter the choices they make. Whether we see those choices as right or wrong, we still love our children and want the very best for them, especially when those choices seem dangerous to us. And that's exactly how Edy was feeling. Syril Karn was manipulated. He was manipulated by the Empire and his girlfriend Dedra Meero. He listened to the lies and bullshit because he was almost like a child who was trying to be an adult, to the point that it got him killed. With the one person he should have taken the advice of actually had his best interest at heart, his safety. So in my eyes, Edy is just as much of a tragedy as her son Syril. The last thing I'll say, and I'll keep it brief, is the interaction at dinner with Syril Karn, Dedra Meero, and Edy. This moment in time was shown to us through Dedra Meero's lens. Even this early on, Dedra had plans to use Syril to benefit her and the Empire. She needs him on her leash and not confined to what she sees as the cage Edy has put Syril in, confining him. And this is why Edy seems worse than normal at the beginning of the dinner. The story is blown out of proportion through Dedra Meero's eyes and telling of how Edy acted during the beginning of that dinner. I'm not saying Dedra didn't care about Syril in the end. She may have. Or she wouldn't be alone in a solitary state crying. But maybe that's another misconception. Maybe she was crying for Syril, but rather crying for what she has done to the innocent people of Gorman. We can tell there's a bit of regret for what she was about to do when she hesitates to give Captain Cato the go-ahead, just before he orders the sniper to fire at will. I don't know what will did to anybody. Why does everybody want to fire at will? Man, I know what it means. I'm not stupid. But it could be also both of these factors that made Dedra so emotional, of which I don't care. She should have been taken out as well. Whatever the case, I'm sure she will get over it rather quickly, as she is likely more worried about her own career in the following moments. But what do you think? Have you enjoyed Andor Season 2 as much as I have? What is your take on Syril Karn, his mother, Edy, and Dedra Meero as seen in Andor Season 2? I do read all the comments and try to respond to as many as I can, time and wife permitting. Just kidding. She doesn't stop me. She's very supportive. Unless I don't hear what she's talking to me about, then she asks me to put my phone away and listen to her. Rightfully so. And I see you clicking off the video before subscribing. I promise your thumb won't fall off if you click the button. I really am trying to get to 50,000 subscribers. I don't want to be the biggest YouTube channel around. I'm not asking for 100,000 subscribers. But that will help me to release more content and do better at it. And I'm not just saying that. Also, consider joining as a channel member to stay informed when I jump into members-only live streams and do members-only what-if stories, which are also coming soon. Thank you for listening to me, and may the Force be with you, unless you don't like the Force, in which case, this is the way. Bye.